Imagine waking up each day wrapped in a fortress built not of stone, but of ideas. An intellectual armor forged to shield the heart from the wounds of betrayal. Arthur, at 70, wears this fortress like a second skin. Years ago, the sting of a friend's treachery shattered the foundation of his trust, leaving behind a raw, aching void. Instead of facing the vulnerability that betrayal carved into his soul, he sought refuge in the citadel of his mind. His sharp wit, his knowledge accumulated over decades as a professor, became not just tools of his trade, but weapons and shields against a world he deemed unworthy of his genuine self. He distances himself from those around him, not out of disdain alone, but as a calculated defense. The laughter of neighbors, the casual camaraderie of acquaintances, all of it feels like a potential threat, a reminder of past wounds that refuse to heal. In his solitude, Arthur cultivates a rigid mask of superiority, an intellectual hauteur that whispers, "I am above all this." It is a mask that convinces him he is immune to further pain, that he stands on a higher plane, untouched by the frailties and failings he so bitterly witnessed in others. Yet beneath the veneer of arrogance lies a trembling fear, a desperate attempt to deny the very human need for connection and trust. The paradox is sharp and cruel. By elevating himself above others, Arthur isolates the very warmth that could mend his fractured spirit. This illusion of invulnerability is seductive. It offers a semblance of control in a life that suddenly feels precarious and unpredictable. But it is also a cage, invisible yet unyielding, where loneliness festers and doubt gnaws quietly in the shadows. Arthur's dismissive attitude toward those he deems lesser or unworthy is not born of mere pride, but of profound pain. Each sneer, each cold glance is a brick in the wall he builds around his heart. He recites philosophy and psychology with the precision of a scholar, yet fails to apply their wisdom to himself. The irony is palpable. The man who once inspired minds now finds himself trapped by the very illusions he once dissected in his lectures. In the quiet hours when the mask feels heaviest, Arthur hears the echo of his own thoughts, an endless loop of overthinking that feeds his insecurities. The betrayal he endured was not just a rupture of friendship, but a fracture in his self-image. To admit weakness would be to risk the collapse of the fortress, so he clings to his intellectual superiority as a talisman against the chaos of emotions he fears to face. This psychological armor is not unique to Arthur. It is a human response to pain that many have adopted across time. Carl Jung spoke of the persona, the mask we wear to meet the world. For Arthur, this persona is rigid and unyielding, a calculated performance designed to keep others at bay. But Jung also warned that such masks, while protective, can become prisons if mistaken for the true self. Friedrich Nietzsche's notion of the will to power echoes here as well. The desire not merely to survive, but to dominate, to assert control over one's reality, especially when that reality feels threatening. As Arthur navigates his days, he convinces himself that his superiority grants him clarity, that he sees the world's flaws and weaknesses with unclouded vision. Yet, this clarity is tainted by the very human fears he refuses to acknowledge. His isolation breeds a silent despair, masked by intellectual condescension, but felt deeply in moments of solitude. The paradox of his existence grows sharper. In elevating himself, he sinks deeper into loneliness. In shielding his heart, he starves it of genuine connection. His routine is meticulous, almost ritualistic. Books line the shelves like sentinels, each volume a fortress stone. Conversations are brief, guarded, and often laced with sarcasm, a language of defense rather than dialogue. His mind races ahead of others, anticipating slights and betrayals that may never come, all the while tightening the chains of his emotional imprisonment. But even the strongest fortress has its vulnerabilities. The human heart, no matter how well guarded, yearns for understanding and belonging. Arthur's mask, as impenetrable as it seems, conceals cracks, small, almost imperceptible fissures where doubt and longing seep through. It is here, in these silent fractures, that the seeds of transformation lie dormant. One might ask, what happens when the fortress begins to show signs of wear? When the loneliness becomes unbearable and the mind's defenses falter? What if someone were to approach Arthur, not with judgment or condescension, but with genuine interest and warmth? Could this intrusion into his carefully constructed world become a catalyst for change, or would it shatter the fragile illusion entirely? These questions linger, unresolved yet pressing, as Arthur continues his solitary vigil. His story is not just about a man who hides behind intellect, but about the universal struggle to balance pride with vulnerability, to find authenticity beneath the masks we wear. As we peer into Arthur's world, we are invited to reflect on our own defenses. What masks do we wear to protect ourselves from pain? How do our illusions of superiority or control isolate us from the very connections we crave? And crucially, what lies beyond the fortress walls we build? The answer begins with a knock on Arthur's door, a new presence that promises to challenge everything he believes about himself and others. Eduardo, the charming neighbor, arrives not just with pleasantries but with a subtle invitation to dismantle the barriers of loneliness and mistrust. Yet, as history has taught Arthur, every invitation carries its own risks. In the next chapter, we will explore how this encounter unfolds, how the dance of admiration and manipulation begins, and how Arthur's fragile world is poised on the brink of a profound reckoning. Stay with us as we delve deeper into the shadows of human connection and the illusions that both protect and betray us. If you find yourself resonating with Arthur's journey, feeling the weight of solitude or the need to break free from your own masks, consider subscribing and leaving a like. Together, we will uncover the truths hidden beneath our facades and find the courage to embrace our authentic selves. Imagine the subtle shift in the air when a stranger's smile carries the weight of unspoken promises. A warmth so inviting it seems to melt the frost built around a guarded heart. Eduardo's arrival in the quiet neighborhood was like the first ray of sunlight piercing through a long, unyielding winter. His charm was effortless, a practiced grace that danced just on the edge of sincerity. To Arthur, who had long wrapped himself in the solitude of intellectual superiority, Eduardo's approach was a balm, an unexpected echo of understanding in a world he had dismissed as shallow and fraught with betrayal. Eduardo listened with an intensity that felt rare, even sacred. His eyes didn't wander, his attention didn't falter. For Arthur, this was intoxicating. Finally, someone who seemed to see beyond the fortress walls, beyond the carefully curated persona of the retired professor. Finally, someone who understands, Arthur thought, his heart whispering a fragile hope he hadn't dared to nurture before. Here was a man who didn't just tolerate his sharp wit, he celebrated it, mirrored it back with admiration that stroked Arthur's bruised ego. The illusion of superiority, once a cold shield, now shimmered with warmth under Eduardo's gaze. But beneath the surface of Eduardo's compliments lay a calculated design, a charisma wielded not in service of connection, but as a tool of manipulation. This was no casual, neighborly kindness. It was a deliberate dance of deception. Eduardo's words were honeyed, each phrase a thread woven into a subtle net designed to entangle Arthur's loneliness and yearning for recognition. Every shared story, every laugh that rang through the afternoon air, tightened the invisible bonds that would soon constrict Arthur's world. Arthur's defenses, so meticulously constructed, began to falter, not because Eduardo was overtly threatening, but because he offered something far more seductive: validation. The man who had once scorned frailties in others now found himself craving the affirmation that Eduardo generously supplied. This craving was a fissure in the fortress, a crack where doubt and desire intertwined. Arthur's mind, once a citadel of reason, became a battleground where hope and suspicion warred silently. Yet the fear of confronting his vulnerability, the raw, exposed self beneath the mask, kept his scrutiny at bay. To question Eduardo too deeply was to risk losing this fragile lifeline, this illusion of control. Eduardo's manipulation was subtle, almost invisible in its craftsmanship. It was not the brazen theft of trust, but the slow erosion of boundaries. He wove himself into Arthur's routines, offering companionship that felt like rescue from isolation. His flattery inflated Arthur's self-worth, but also seeded dependency, a dangerous cocktail for a man whose self-esteem was already tethered to fragile constructs. Financial requests were framed as favors between friends, emotional appeals disguised as shared confidences. Arthur, desperate not to lose the connection he feared he didn't deserve, ignored the small alarms ringing in his mind. This dynamic reflects a profound psychological truth. The illusion of superiority can make one blind to the very vulnerabilities it seeks to conceal. Arthur's belief in his intellectual and moral ascendancy created a paradoxical blindness, a blindness to the manipulative shadows lurking beneath Eduardo's smile. The charismatic manipulator thrives on such blindness, exploiting the prey's illusions to deepen control. This is not mere naivety, but a complex interplay of human needs, recognition, belonging, and the dread of isolation. Philosophers have long pondered the nature of such deception. Friedrich Nietzsche warned of the dangers inherent in the will to power, where the pursuit of dominance leads not to freedom, but to new forms of bondage, chains forged by one's own desires and fears. Carl Jung's insights into the persona and shadow illuminate how the masks we wear can both protect and imprison us. Eduardo, in this narrative, embodies the shadow figure, the external manifestation of Arthur's internal fears and unacknowledged needs, reflecting back the parts of himself he refuses to confront. As days turned into weeks, Arthur's world narrowed, filtered through Eduardo's presence. The neighborhood's once muted colors seemed brighter when shared with his new friend, and the fortress walls felt less confining. Yet, beneath this veneer of progress, the seeds of betrayal took root. Eduardo's true intentions, initially obscured by charm and seeming empathy, began to surface in small, unsettling ways. Slight inconsistencies, the occasional overstep, hints of entitlement masked as friendship. Each moment was a test, a subtle probe of Arthur's defenses. But Arthur, caught in the web of his own illusions, dismissed these signs as paranoia or jealousy, failures of others to understand the nuanced dance unfolding. He clung to the belief that Eduardo was an ally, a rare confidant who had finally pierced his solitude. The fear of facing the void alone was greater than the fear of deception. This is the cruel irony of the charismatic manipulator's embrace. It offers the illusion of understanding while tightening the grip of control. The delicate balance between trust and suspicion teetered dangerously close to collapse when Eduardo's desire extended beyond companionship to possession. The moment came, a brazen attempt to claim a relic of Arthur's family, an object steeped in memory and meaning. This act was no longer veiled in subtlety, but stark and undeniable. The illusion shattered with a sound like glass breaking, sending shards of reality scattering across the floor of Arthur's carefully constructed world. Faced with the stark truth of betrayal once again, Arthur's fortress cracked wide open. The pain was no longer abstract or intellectual, but visceral and immediate. The mask of superiority, once a shield, now felt like a prison. Yet within this collapse lay the seed of transformation. The recognition of vulnerability, the acceptance of hurt not as weakness but as a path to authenticity, began to dawn. Arthur's journey toward healing would demand a dismantling of old defenses and the courage to seek connection on new terms. In the next chapter, we will witness Arthur's painful yet liberating confrontation with his own illusions. the emergence of authentic strength born from acceptance, and the first tentative steps toward rebuilding trust, not only with others but within himself. The story invites us to consider, what does it truly mean to be strong? Is it the armor we wear, or the courage to stand bare and real? If Arthur's story stirs something within you, whether it be the ache of loneliness, the fear of betrayal, or the longing for genuine connection, stay with us. Together, we will navigate the shadowed paths toward freedom from our own illusions and toward the light of authentic selfhood. Remember to subscribe and leave a like, sharing your own journey as we explore these profound human truths. Imagine standing at the edge of a dense forest, sunlight filtering through the leaves, yet shadows stretch long and deep beneath the canopy. You think you see the path clearly, each step carefully chosen, every obstacle anticipated. But hidden in the underbrush are blind spots, silent warnings your eyes fail to catch, murmurs your mind chooses to ignore. For Arthur, these blind spots are not physical, but psychological, forged by years of pride and fear. They cloak him in a deceptive calm while predators circle unseen. Arthur's fortress of intellectual superiority, once a beacon of strength, has become a double-edged sword. It blinds him to the subtle encroachments of Eduardo's charm, which, like a skilled illusionist, masks manipulation beneath warmth. Pride whispers to Arthur that he is untouchable, that his experience and wisdom render him immune to naivety. Fear, however, lurks beneath this pride, the fear of vulnerability, of confronting the raw wounds left by past betrayals. Together, these twin forces conspire to silence the alarms that might otherwise protect him. This psychological interplay is not unique to Arthur. It is a universal human predicament. Carl Jung's concept of the shadow, the hidden aspects of ourselves we deny or suppress, offers profound insight here. Arthur's pride is a facade concealing the shadow of his loneliness and insecurity. Eduardo, in this tale, embodies more than just a manipulator. He is the external manifestation of Arthur's unacknowledged fears and needs. The danger lies in Arthur's refusal to acknowledge these shadows, blinding him to Eduardo's true intentions. The blindness is both cognitive and emotional. Cognitive biases, like confirmation bias, lead Arthur to interpret Eduardo's flattery as validation, reinforcing his belief that he has found a kindred spirit. Meanwhile, the fear of rejection or isolation suppresses his instinctual doubts. This cocktail of bias and fear creates a fertile ground for emotional exploitation. Eduardo's slow, deliberate erosion of boundaries, requests for money disguised as favors, subtle demands on Arthur's time and trust, go unnoticed or are rationalized away. Arthur's pride convinces him that he is the master of this relationship, yet beneath the surface, the balance of power shifts subtly but steadily toward Eduardo. Philosophers like Nietzsche warned us about the perils of the will to power, where the desire for control can paradoxically result in bondage. Arthur's quest for control through superiority has ensnared him in new chains, fashioned not by others, but by his own fears and illusions. His intellectual armor, once a source of pride, now limits his vision, preventing him from seeing the cracks forming in his defenses. The social context compounds this vulnerability. Aging often brings an acute awareness of decline, physical, cognitive, social, which can fuel a desperate clinging to any remaining sources of identity and control. Isolation intensifies this effect, making the allure of any genuine connection, or what seems like it, almost irresistible. Eduardo's arrival exploits this existential hunger, offering not just friendship, but the illusion of understanding and acceptance. Arthur, starved of genuine connection, laps up this mirage, even as it slowly drains him. The silent warnings, small inconsistencies in Eduardo's stories, moments of impatience or entitlement, are easy to dismiss when your mind is clouded by the hope of belonging. The paradox deepens. Pride blinds Arthur to Eduardo's exploitation, while fear prevents him from confronting the painful truth. This dynamic mirrors the tragic dance many experience when pride and fear intersect, leaving them vulnerable to those who prey on such frailties. Yet, these blind spots are not permanent. They are fissures in the fortress, cracks through which light can eventually penetrate. Recognition of this vulnerability, though agonizing, is the first step toward liberation. Arthur's story embodies this painful but essential journey, from the illusion of invulnerability to the acceptance of human fragility. The silent warnings once dismissed begin to clamor louder, demanding attention. Soon these warnings will crescendo into a moment of undeniable truth, a rupture that shatters the illusion and exposes the raw reality beneath. This breaking point will force Arthur to confront not only Eduardo's betrayal, but the deeper wounds his pride and fear have concealed. It is here, at this precipice, that transformation beckons. As Arthur stands at the threshold of this reckoning, we are reminded that the path toward authentic strength often begins with surrender. The courage to face our blind spots, to listen to the silent warnings we have long ignored. The next chapter will reveal how this confrontation unfolds, as Arthur wrestles with betrayal and begins the arduous process of rebuilding trust in himself and others. If Arthur's struggle resonates with your own experiences of pride, fear, or the hunger for genuine connection, stay with us. Together, we will explore the hard-won freedom that comes from embracing vulnerability and breaking free from the illusions that bind us. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, sharing your journey toward authenticity in the comments below. Imagine the cold snap of a glass shattering in a silent room, sharp fragments scattering unpredictably, each shard reflecting a fractured truth. This is the moment Arthur faces, not with the detached gaze of a scholar, but with the raw, trembling heart of a man stripped bare. Eduardo's brazen attempt to claim the delicate family relic, once a symbol of lineage, love, and unspoken history, rips through the veil of flattery and false warmth. The illusion Arthur so carefully tended collapses like a house of cards caught in a gust of harsh reality. In that instant, the fortress of intellectual superiority, once thought impenetrable, reveals its deepest vulnerability, the desperate human yearning for connection, recognition, and trust. Arthur's eyes, wide with disbelief, see Eduardo not as the kindred spirit he longed for, but as a manipulator who preyed on his loneliness and pride. The betrayal cuts deeper than any past wound, for it is not only a loss of trust, but a stark confrontation with his own blindness. A blindness crafted by his own illusions of control. This shattering forces Arthur into a confrontation he had long avoided. The false control that superiority promised, control over emotions, over vulnerability, over the unpredictability of human relationships, crumbles under the weight of Eduardo's deceit. For all his intellectual armor, Arthur is not immune to the pain of being used, of being seen as weak despite the facade of strength. The paradox is harsh. The very mask meant to protect him became the beacon that attracted exploitation. As the shards of this illusion fall, Arthur's mind races through a tumult of emotions: shame, anger, despair, and a profound sense of emptiness. The betrayal resurrects the ghosts of past wounds, amplifying the loneliness he tried to escape. Yet, amid the chaos, there flickers a fragile ember, the first glimmer of acceptance that vulnerability is not a flaw, but a doorway. This is no longer about masking pain with superiority. It is about facing the rawness of being human. The psychological collapse Arthur experiences mirrors the journey Carl Jung described when the persona, the mask we wear, must fall away for the authentic self to emerge. Jung warned that clinging to the persona traps us in illusions that estrange us from our true nature. Arthur's fall is painful precisely because it dismantles a fortress built with years of defense and denial. But it is also liberating. offering a painful but necessary passage from isolation to genuine connection. In this crucible of betrayal, Arthur begins to understand the insidious nature of superiority illusions. They do not shield us from harm. Instead, they distort reality, blinding us to our own needs and the complexities of others. Friedrich Nietzsche's concept of the will to power resonates here. Arthur's striving for dominance over his inner chaos ironically led to a new form of bondage, one where his pride chained him to repeated patterns of mistrust and solitude. The collapse is not a defeat, but an invitation. It beckons Arthur to relinquish the illusion of control and embrace the uncertainty of vulnerability. This is a treacherous path, fraught with the risk of pain but rich with the promise of authentic freedom. The emotional and intellectual walls he built must be dismantled brick by brick to allow light and trust to enter. Arthur's journey from this point forward is one of slow, deliberate healing. He seeks help, reaching out to therapy and support groups, spaces where masks are shed and authentic selves are nurtured. The process is neither linear nor easy. It demands facing the fears that superiority once kept at bay. Yet with each step, Arthur discovers that true strength lies not in distancing himself from others, but in building sincere, reciprocal relationships. Reconnecting with his family, especially his granddaughter, becomes a cornerstone of this transformation. Through these bonds, Arthur experiences the warmth and acceptance he once denied himself, learning that vulnerability fosters resilience, not weakness. The freedom of being authentically seen, flaws and all, replaces the brittle armor of intellectual arrogance. This radical shift redefines Arthur's understanding of power and control. Where once he equated strength with superiority and detachment, he now embraces humility and openness as sources of genuine empowerment. The freedom to be imperfect, to ask for help, and to engage vulnerably with others becomes his new fortress, a living, breathing sanctuary far stronger than walls of pride. As the story unfolds, Arthur's fall from the pedestal of superiority is a profound lesson in human frailty and resilience. It challenges us to reflect on the masks we wear, the illusions we cling to, and the courage required to confront our deepest fears. His journey is a beacon for anyone who has ever felt the sting of betrayal or the loneliness of isolation, reminding us that the path to freedom lies through the acceptance of our shared humanity. In the next chapter, we will witness Arthur's gradual rebirth, the emergence of authentic self-confidence, the forging of genuine connections, and the reclamation of freedom beyond the shadows of past wounds and false control. This is a story not just of survival, but of transformation, inviting us all to consider: what might we discover if we dared to lower our masks and embrace the vulnerability that makes us truly alive? If Arthur's painful yet hopeful journey resonates with your own struggles or aspirations for connection and authenticity, stay with us. Subscribe, leave a like, and share your reflections as we continue to explore the profound truths hidden beneath the illusions we carry. Together, we can find the courage to break free and step into the light of our true selves. Imagine the fragile silence that follows the shattering of a long-held illusion, like the sudden hush after a storm's furious winds have torn through the trees, leaving behind raw branches reaching vulnerably toward a sky that no longer offers shelter. Arthur stands amidst the ruins of his carefully constructed fortress, the remnants of his intellectual superiority scattered like splintered glass at his feet. The relic, once a symbol of family and history, now lies beyond reach, claimed by the very person who wore the mask of friendship. In this crushing moment, Arthur faces a truth he had long evaded. The fortress he built to protect himself had become his prison, and the very shield he wielded to fend off pain had blinded him to the wounds festering within. The weight of betrayal is suffocating, but beneath the despair, a faint pulse of possibility stirs. Vulnerability, once feared as a chink in the armor, is no longer an enemy to be vanquished, but a doorway waiting to be opened. Arthur's journey now pivots from defense to surrender, from isolation to connection. This surrender is neither weakness nor defeat. It is the courageous act of standing bare in a world that often demands facades. It is the recognition that to be truly strong is to be authentically human, embracing the full spectrum of our imperfections, fears, and hopes. In the days that follow, Arthur embarks on a path that feels both terrifying and liberating. Therapy becomes his sanctuary, a space where the walls of pretense dissolve, and raw emotions are met not with judgment but with gentle understanding. The once daunting task of confronting his vulnerability transforms into an act of self-compassion. Here, he learns that the wounds inflicted by betrayal are not marks of failure, but invitations to deeper self-awareness and growth. The mask of superiority, so long his refuge, begins to crumble, revealing a self that is fragile yet resilient, broken yet whole. Arthur's reconnection with his family offers another profound lesson in authenticity. His granddaughter, a beacon of youthful warmth and unconditional acceptance, becomes a mirror reflecting the beauty of genuine connection. Through their conversations, laughter, and shared silences, Arthur experiences the transformative power of being seen, not as a professor, not as a fortress of intellect, but simply as himself. The walls that once kept others at bay now serve as bridges, inviting healing and belonging. This radical shift in Arthur's perspective echoes the wisdom of Carl Jung, who spoke of the integration of the shadow, the hidden, often painful parts of ourselves, into the conscious self. Arthur's journey embodies this integration, where vulnerability is reclaimed as a source of strength rather than shame. Friedrich Nietzsche's reflections on the will to power find new meaning here. True power is not dominance over others or oneself, but the humble acceptance of life's inherent uncertainties and the courage to engage with them authentically. The freedom Arthur discovers is profound. No longer does he seek to control his world through intellectual superiority or emotional detachment. Instead, he embraces the messy, unpredictable nature of human relationships, finding in them a wellspring of resilience and joy. The chains of isolation fall away, replaced by a newfound confidence rooted in authenticity. Arthur's story becomes a testament to the transformative power of vulnerability, a beacon for anyone who has felt the sting of betrayal or the ache of loneliness. As the sun sets on this chapter of his life, Arthur stands not as a man armored against the world, but as one who has learned to dance with its complexities. The lessons carved into his soul through pain and healing invite reflection. What masks do we wear that hide our true selves? What fears keep us from embracing vulnerability? And most importantly, how might our lives change if we dared to lower those walls and open ourselves to genuine connection? Arthur's journey is far from unique. It is a mirror held up to all who have grappled with the paradox of strength and fragility, pride and humility, isolation and belonging. His story challenges us to reconsider our own illusions of control and superiority, to find the courage to be seen as we truly are, and to discover in that authenticity the freedom that eluded us for so long. If Arthur's painful yet inspiring transformation resonates with you, if you've ever felt the weight of loneliness or the fear of being vulnerable, know that you are not alone. There is strength in seeking help, wisdom in embracing imperfection, and profound freedom in living authentically. Share your own journey in the comments below. Let us build a community where vulnerability is honored and connection flourishes. Remember to subscribe and leave a like, so together we can continue exploring the depths of our humanity and the paths that lead us from isolation to true inner freedom.